What the fuck is Self Quar?
You ever wait to the last minute to do something and then you realize you've waited to the last minute, and if you don't hustle, if you don't stay up, then you are not going to get it done. And then you still give up anyway? If you know what I'm talking about, you know you've come to Self Quar with Baron Vaughn. That's right, guys. Dark confessionals. That's how I do it. Dark confessionals. There's nothing to it. These are voices that I've always used to entertain myself. I play games because I never grew up in a lot of ways. Anyway, hello. I hope you're well. I hope you're okay. I hope you're feeling yourself in every sense of the word, from the literal to the metaphorical to the hyperbolical. Am I right? To the diabolical. Wait a minute. No, not that one. A lot of diabolical feelings happening these days. And by these days, I mean this last millennia. Anyway, here I am talking to you in this room. Yeah, I always get nervous to do this because I don't know that things are going to be okay. It really is this like ancient fucking wound that I gotta sit with these days. So, guys, let me be really open right now. Here's what I'm learning about myself. I don't know shit. I mean, I know shit, but I don't know shit. Okay. If you were here last time, you know what I'm talking about. I point to my head when I say, I know shit. And then I point to my heart when I say, but I don't know shit. And if you can feel it in the voice, then you know what I've made as a physical choice. Really, it is this thing where I'm like, I'm doing this body work. And there's a lot of different ways to think about and talk about all this stuff. But what I am learning is I am very disconnected from my own body. I don't think I've ever had a sense of safety. And that's, I'm not saying that's original. I'm just saying that's my shit. So what I realized is I grew up in the whole of my whole childhood was danger at all times. Danger inside the house, danger outside the house. So at no point did I ever feel like there was someone I could go to as a child. That's the whole way I've always felt. And I'm not saying that from a place of pity, but from a place of deep realization, I guess, self forgiveness. Because now I kind of understand that this average basic shit that most of us take for granted because you were possibly raised, because you possibly had a family that talked to each other, because you grew up in a neighborhood where people weren't getting, murdered, then you might have that sort of life where you left your door unlocked, you know, when you left, or just when you slept, because you didn't know, or you just knew that nothing was going to happen to you. I envy that sense of safety. I used to see it as naivete, as stupidity, even. And of course, in a lot of ways it is. But whoever you are, the person that was able to do that, you have a sense of physical safety that I am trying to get to. And I think that that's true for a lot of different people in a lot of different ways. And to me, it always seems it's about the body, right? It's about someone out there either doesn't want you to have your body or thinks your body is nothing. And then you don't get to relax and to be in it. But I've realized that this sense of physical safety is what we're all kind of searching for. And a lot of us have um, a baseline. You might even call it secure. You're a secure person. And I'm not trying to insult you. I want to be you. I'm done romanticizing, I guess, this part of myself that is the piece of me that creates. It's hypervigilance, y'all. I was just had a day of a lot of different kinds of therapy today. So here's the thing that I realized, like, as a child, this is like middle school through high school. If I had a week where I did not interact with my mother in any way, that was a good week. Do you hear what I'm saying? This was a house of avoidance and silence, just eggshells all the time. This just kind of feeling in the air of danger and anger. Okay? So we didn't communicate. I tried to stay very silent and very still. And I developed a hypervigilance, you could call it, but I call it ninja skills. Las Vegas is a very strange place, at least where I grew up was. The part of Vegas that I grew up in. It was the hood, but there was no sense of community at all. These were very separate apartment complexes that in and of themselves already kind of looked like prisons. And then we had these high ass walls, brick walls, separating all the different places. And of course, when they figured out that we kids figured out that these walls weren't that high, we could climb them, they made them fucking higher. So if I was walking down the street, there weren't any trees. It was just concrete and a wall. And I was on a sidewalk. Anyone could run up on me. There was nowhere to go. So I developed this sense to be able to hear people coming from a far distance. I developed a sense to hear the speed and the weight of footsteps. So I could hear how far someone was behind me and what intention they might have. That's what I was trying to predict. If I could hear somebody coming up on me, then I could turn around and have enough time to break for it. I learned to develop, a sense to see shadows around the corner just in case someone was waiting there. Because again, this is just fucking brick walls for some damn reason. It's stupid ass neighborhood. So I was like, okay, I can watch the shadows. I can hear somebody breathing. I can hear someone hold their breath. Meanwhile, at home, those exact same skills is how I could tell where my mom might be in the house. Is she in the kitchen? Is she in her own bedroom? So that way I could hear if she was heavy stepped. If these were erratic footsteps, irrational footsteps. If they were light, if they were fast, if they were slow, what direction they were going, coming, going, hither, thither. Because at any time she could just walk into my room. Did I tell you I didn't have doorknobs? Guys, I did not have doorknobs on my bedroom door, nor did I have them on my bathroom door. I had a door, there was that. But at any time, somebody could just walk in, and that somebody was the same person. So I developed a sense, if I was in the bathroom, to be able to hear somebody coming from a long way away. Now, you might be saying, that sounds like jungle shit. At all times, I was sensitive to predators, whether they be my own clan or rival tribes. Okay, that's enough of that for now. But isn't that interesting? That's interesting to me is that I realized that that's how I also learned how to act, because I also kind of figured out how to always be able to react to the very physical presence of someone, trying to sense what their intention is, which is why I have no boundaries today. I can transform into all these different people when it's for the use of someone else, but when it's for me to summon up my own personal love, that's where I'm seeing I have built a big ass block, because then my guard will be down. You see what I'm saying? And that's when someone can run up on me. That shit is just there. And a lot of people grew up in neighborhoods where people could run up on you, but maybe you felt safe at home. I hope you did. I knew a lot of people who did, and people who grew up in hoods that are recognizable, in cities like Los Angeles or Chicago or Atlanta, where there's still, as far as I understand, a sense of community. Speaking of which, my guest today is a very, very brilliant person. I hate to call her a genius. That's something that she would probably disagree with and be annoyed with. Maybe even. But that's how I know it would be a true compliment to her. I don't think she's concerned with labels. By the way, this person is named Young Jean Lee. I would call her a playwright. I would call her a filmmaker. I would call her a poet, a philosopher, a songwriter, a singer, a professor. She's just an impressive person. I met her a long time ago through a mutual friend. Shout out to Lee Sunday Evans. And she had written this play called The Shipment, which I had the honor of seeing as well. All black cast. Young Jean Lee is an Asian American. And I was like, interesting. She's written this play of all black people. And so I went to see it, and it's still one of my favorite theatrical experiences. Now, I'm a theater person. I like all kinds of experiences live, whether it be stand up, music, movies, but also like theater is like the thing that can do something to you when it's real. This is the kind of shit that I try to bring into my stand up that I think sometimes confuses audience because it's not what they're used to, but it's the only thing I know how to do. See, look, I'm already apologizing for myself. Anyway, the point is, Young Jean had created this play that was like an experience, and it was. Oh man, I hate to try to describe her work. I almost feel like it's like an insult to try to describe her work. But she plays with form, she plays with theme, she plays with story. She is a breaker of rules, and that's why I hate to try to even put a label to her, in a sense. But she is all the things that I named at once. But she's just also, and of course, that in and of itself would make her very interesting, which of course she is. So I've always kind of kept track of her career. Um, we know a lot of mutual people. She's just one of these people that if you know some real shit, then you know who Young Jean Lee is. I encourage you to go check out her work, read her plays. The Shipment is one of them. We're All Gonna Die, which is also an album with her band Future Wife, who has just collaborated with a couple of people like Lou Reed and David Byrne. Just interesting, and that's what I'm saying. Like, she's always just she's out here to do stuff. She works really hard, which, by the way, is a big theme of this podcast. I would like to tell you that I talked to Young Jean 2 days before the insurrection on the Capitol. 2 days before, okay, and we had come into the new year, so again, there's a bit of nostalgia here. But I think everything will still apply. And then after that, I have, of course, Caddy Corner. Um, yeah, so I almost want to just say a bunch of words to describe Young Jean's work, but I just want you guys to go, you know what? After the interview, I will tell you that. How about that shit? Most people are asking, what are you doing? I like to ask, how are you doing? So how are you doing?
I am doing well. I was kind of, I was sort of scared of today because today is sort of the day when a lot of people are back from their vacations. Um, and I was afraid that I just imagined, the sea of people just, crouched over their computers, just waiting to unleash a barrage of email communications, and that the relative that the relative peace that I've experienced in the past few weeks would go away immediately. But it seems like people are easing their way back into it. It seems like nobody is eager to launch straight back into that constant virtual communication that had gotten so out of control, like just right before people started taking time off.
Yeah. Why do you think that people are easing into it? Do you have any theories on that?
I mean, maybe people are feeling the same way I'm feeling. That things were got a little bit out of control because the interesting thing is now that we can't be together in person,
Hmm.
um, I feel like we're gathering more because there's no excuse to get out of anything anymore.
Because technically
So
we're all home.
right. Everyone knows, where you are and that you're available, and it's just really hard to get out of things. And so, meetings that used to have 50% attendance on a regular basis now have 100%, or close to it. And I just feel like people are, scheduling meetings just back to back to back to back. And, the convenience of meeting is now increasing this sort of virtual communication. And I do think that it was just getting to a point where it was out of control. So I'm hoping that people had a similar experience to me, and they were like, you know what, it was actually kind of nice not to get a million emails every day and not to have to be on Zoom all day, and maybe we can, maybe we're not eager to just leap back into that.
Well, they say it, always takes a little distance from a pattern to see that you may have been living one out, like a
Yeah.
kind of, even especially a toxic pattern. Do you think that like there are some patterns, or this is one of the patterns that you see possibly people backing off of? And do you have ideas of like other ones that are out there that you notice?
I'm afraid to jinx myself.
Oh, you're
um
superstitious like that.
I guess, yeah, because if I'm like, "Oh, like, I think this is gonna be a, trend, and, and then I'm just gonna wake up tomorrow, and there's gonna
And it's
be, like,
done.
100 emails in my inbox." So, I'm just enjoying the moment. I'm just enjoying today, having this one lovely conversation with you, and that's it, and, yeah, just the peace I am enjoying.
Well, I think that for my money, that piece is we have to kind of set boundaries in a different way, I feel like we've always sort of, I think, as a planet,
Mhm.
especially like in Los Angeles, you know um we're always kind of in that scramble, in that race, and I think that that kind of like I got to get out there and do things is one of the biggest and hardest motivators that's been hard for people to let go of. Now, it comes out in different ways. Some people have used that obviously for fantastically positive reasons, like all the different marches, protests, obviously the people voting, people, like getting people involved and communicating. And you're talking about all these different meetings and stuff too, like everything from like DGA meeting to sunrise movement is like just everyone is like there. And you're like, oh, okay, like people are showing up. But, I feel like we started to do that in that digital space,
Yeah.
a little bit more, getting that rat race. But people also kind of liked being at home, I think. And people kind of liked being able to relax. But I don't think that we're used to having a language for negotiating all those things. You know what I mean? Like, how can
Yeah.
I get all this stuff done, but also have sweet, sweet me space? Sweet, sweet afternoon nap. I kind of like maybe an afternoon nap. I'll tell you this as a parent though. As a parent though, I love that I've never
Mhm.
said that phrase, and I've always hated people who have said that phrase to me. But this, for me at least, having these children in my face is a different experience that I was not. I mean, I knew it was going to be hard, but you never know. People say it's going to be hard. You can read 80 books that say it's going to be hard. They're all titled that. It's going to be hard, 1 through 80. And it still doesn't let you know. So I feel like that demand of come up, come be here, be here, be here is a little like not friendly for people who aren't committed to the hustle at all times. Does that make any sense?
That makes perfect sense. I mean, I read over the break, I read this amazing article that the playwright, brilliant playwright Claire Barron wrote, and it was all
Love the last
about
name.
um, it was all about how she's been depressed, suffering from clinical depression, and so she has not been doing anything.
Hmm.
According to this essay, and I think she wrote it like a year ago or something. So she may be back in the hustle by now. But when she wrote this essay, um, she was not in the hustle and she had been very inactive for a while, and she was kind of talking about um I, I, what you and I are talking about, this kind of panic that people experience, and I see it a lot in my students and the young people, the young artists I mentor, like especially in their 20s, there is this total panic that is very specific to the 20 something person, because, uh, you know, um, there's this, you just have no idea what's going to happen, especially now during the, pandemic and with the world falling apart. Like
Even though there's a
um,
barrage of information at all times.
this is a crazy time to be in your 20s. This is a crazy time
Yes, I can
to
imagine it.
be graduating, especially with any kind of arts degree. Like I feel so much for these young folks. But I think that, this panic that they all feel, I think Claire wrote this essay in part to sort of like alleviate some of that panic. And I was thinking, like, I'm in my 40s and I also experience that panic. It's not the same 20 something panic, but it's just that must always be hustling, just always be working, never, you can't ever not show up for something, like you have to be productive. um and I was thinking about it, and this panic, it's just all capitalism, you
Mm,
know it's all just
hallelujah.
it's all just capitalism. We're all
Always be
in
closing.
this. Yeah, always be closing. And, especially now with the pandemic, and, so many people are in terrible financial situations, and their,
Yeah.
financial future looks incredibly bleak. And, we're all going through various levels of struggle right now, with respect to money. And the past 4 years, the government has made it, very, very clear that they just do not give a shit at all,
Yes.
about any,
IDGAF, I believe was the name of
it's
the bill.
yeah, it's basically just get rich or screw you,
Or die trying.
that's basically our current government. And so,
Hmm.
I just feel like we just all have so much terror, and it's terror of just being destitute. And even if the terror isn't destitution, the idea, there's something about our current culture where, I don't know, like if people stop following you on social media, or you stop getting phone calls from certain people, then you just cease to exist. It's almost like you're dead. Like if you're not relevant, if you're not out there, if you're not a product. And
Ooh.
all of that is just it can't possibly be good for us, Baron,
If you're
like
not
it
a product, amen to that. No,
y-
you're absolutely correct. I have two things to run by you on that. Um, I want to put one question in your head though, just to,
mhm.
in the back pocket, which is how are ways that you are finding to alleviate that panic for yourself? Like what things are working for you? And I only mean specifically you. But before you answer that question,
Mhm.
to what you just said, I just saw two documentaries. One is a documentary of a book that I also bought that I have not read because it's 800 pages. Um, it's called Capitalism: The Story of Money in the 21st Century. It's
Mhm.
this French economist named Thomas, I don't know if it's Piketty or Piketty, but there is a doc on Netflix in which he is basically making this incredible argument about capitalism. People already say, oh, it's resting on top. People have to be disadvantaged for capitalism to work. Yes, maybe, but people have specifically done that, over and over again. And he kind of tells the narrative of how the economy has worked, and then also the story that politicians and rich people have told over and over again in these different places, and how it's worked in all these different ways. The ways that it makes a society work after that, and how it continues to crash and restart and crash and restart. But it's all about wealth distribution, right? So that is fascinating. He also said that there's about to be, I think, $12 trillion of wealth passed on. That's just inherited by the next generation, which is the discrepancy of wealth in like 17th, 16th century England and France. That's the same. We're talking about like inheritance is going to be more important than anything else. That's what people have been working for. Then I just saw the Reagans, which the 4-part Showtime documentary. I've always wanted to know more about Reagan from the perspective of someone not being like, he was the best. We all agree. Just like, no, the guy was full of it. The guy was full of it though. And this is a great breakdown of how his policies, what he stood for, which was nothing, and then how
Mhm.
his policies undid America and set us up for, I think, what we're in right now, which is this you're on your damn own sort of attitude. The government is not
Yeah.
coming for you. That is not the job. Small government, okay? And if you aren't succeeding, you are a moral failure. That's on you. And God doesn't want you to succeed. Sorry, we all decided. That seems to be like what all those policies just did to us. Your thoughts?
I agree 100%. Um, I think that, one thing that just always kills me is that in order for capitalism to function, we actually need a certain percentage of people to be unemployed at all times. Otherwise, capitalism doesn't work. Because if
Yeah.
everybody's employed, then workers can just demand whatever salaries they want, and there's no way to um, it's just it can't work that way.
Hmm.
You need some people to be unemployed. You need the threat of unemployment in order for all of these rich people to make all of their money. And so, to me, that just makes the moral argument completely fall apart. In order to function, we need people to be unemployed. So if you are unemployed, you're actually helping capitalism to function. And so we need to like take
Mm.
care, like if even if you're like pro capitalism, we need to just make sure that the people we need to be unemployed at any given time are, can eat and like educate their kids and like get healthcare. It's just um, so to me, that just kind of
Mhm.
cancels out a lot of the moral argument of, it's your moral obligation to get rich because if everyone actually followed that, then capitalism would fall apart. Um, so
Yes.
uh, so there's that. And then there is the way in which this indoctrination you're talking about has just worked.
So well.
It's not like it's just a bunch of rich people sitting around saying like, ha ha ha, like we got rich, screw everyone else, we don't care. And then everyone else is, saying, hey, let us in too. No, the majority of everyone else is also basically screw us. Screw us. Like and like I've spoken to people who are on welfare, who are anti-welfare. Like they are on welfare, they rely on welfare in order to
Yeah.
survive, and they are anti-welfare. And it's just it does not, And I've spoken to many people who have had this experience where it's just that moral.
Yes.
outrage against the unsuccessful within capitalism. It's just so pervasive, and we're Americans are using it to blame ourselves.
Yes, yes. And because it's like if you don't have everything that you should have, and you should have a lot, it's because you're lazy or evil or broken or bad. And then the people who are trying to get that, they're like, I don't have all the stuff. I must be lazy or evil or broken or bad. So it's like, it's mea culpa on both sides of that. Either you're whipping yourself or you're whipping someone else.
It's just it's horrible. It's a horrible mentality.
It really is.
I call it like the bootstrapping mentality,
No, that's
of the
absolutely right. Absolutely right.
pull yourself up by your bootstraps mentality. And it's just, if it were just the rich people who believe that, we would not have a problem in this country, right? But it's like
Yeah.
it's so within, and oh my god, and there are so many people in this country who think that they are rich. They think that they are the ones being threatened. Like, I was talking to this guy, and he was just like, as a rich person, I just feel really threatened by all of these democratic policies. And it turns out, like, I find out what the guy does. There's no way he makes more than, like, $100,000 a year. And this is not like, he is identifying with Trump as somebody who makes $100,000 a year. He's identifying with millionaires and billionaires. So it's like, we need to, and he nobody's trying to come for his money, and he doesn't know that.
No, no.
And so, like, it's just,
But this
well,
is where we
actually,
start to. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
oh no, no, you go ahead.
Well, I think this is where it starts to intersect with, racial and class dynamics. This is where, for me, that's where people are, do and don't believe that they are and aren't rich, or are next to rich, or their
Yes,
proximity to richness would be X, Y, and Z, if only, A, B, and C weren't over here.
yes.
Um, and even, of course, people of color are susceptible to that exact same idea, because it's so pervasive in our society that we don't even know where it came from. That's like, it's like that hearts and minds thing. We've just been beaten over the head with these ideas that people accept to be intrinsic, to human nature, as opposed to, no, a line that someone fed you so that way you would stay where you are. But we're so busy in the rat race, we're too busy being in that state of constant trigger and anxiety and panic to really, because everyone's struggling. So I always
Mhm.
go like, it's not necessarily by design, but it's runaway evolution, if anything. But I definitely think it's also by design.
Yes. Yes, it's definitely by design. It's being done very purposefully, and it's become almost like, you know, um, I don't know, there's some quote about, like, a fish swimming in water, like, doesn't know what water is. I think that, uh, people living within capitalism, they don't even know that we don't even know that we're swimming in capitalism. We don't even know that we're contributing to it. I'm sure I do a million things every day that are just perpetuating and contributing to and continuing this sort of mentality, just
Hmm.
because it's just, um, it's just so a part of who we are and how we live now, this way of thinking.
It makes us consume, because if we are in this constant panic, then we are like, well, what is it that I need to make this feeling stop? And
Yes.
that's where, you know, a thing or a job or the place or whatever the, you know, equation, whatever's at the end of the equal sign in someone's mind of equals happiness. Happiness equals fart sound, excuse me for the listeners, but it's just that's what it is. If I get X, then I will feel Y. But it's not necessarily how things work, but we're too busy. Now, I'm going to back off this subject because we're both getting slightly worked up, I want to say.
Okay.
So, how do you de-escalate? Back to my original question.
Well, I am speaking as a very extreme case of this, where I actually had to seek therapy specifically to deal with this problem,
Mm, mm,
because I am a pretty insane workaholic. And,
mm.
I have been for most of my life, and the older I get, the worse the workaholism becomes,
Mm.
because, because I'm now, I can now see, a period, I can see the period of my life where ageism is gonna start to impact me. You know what I mean? And ageism is not something you think about when you're in your 20s and 30s as much, like, depending on your profession, especially if you're a writer, um but I was just, um, you know, I and also the older you get, it's like the more work and the more opportunities come on your plate. So I spent maybe, oh God, like a year just waking up in the morning and I would work, almost until I went to sleep. And that could just go on for days where the work would just not stop. And
Define work, please. Define work.
um work is basically uh eh, so I'm so I'm actually working on maybe like 6, 7 different projects right now that are
Wow.
all, um, pretty big. They're artistic projects, and, so they're all going at the same time. They all require lots of emailing and phone calls and logistics, and,
Mm.
I'm also teaching full time at Stanford,
Yeah, that's
which
the other
also
thing.
has like a ton of moving parts. So it's just the amount of like the number of emails, meetings, things I have to write. It's there was no boundary basically. Like that was my 2020 where there was no limit, no boundary. So it would just all the work would just expand to fill up the time that I had. And I
And no
actually
one on the
ended
other
up
side of these emails knows that you're doing all of these things, or they assume that, well, she knows what she's doing, so I'm just going to keep inundating her.
People were starting to get weirded out though. They were like, "Wow, you are the fastest responder to all of my barrage of emails," and I was like, "It's because I literally don't step away, especially now that I'm doing intermittent fasting. So I don't even step away to eat now. So it's like I'm just working nonstop, and so
Wow. Okay.
I had to seek therapy specifically for this issue because it's not a healthy way to live. And so the therapy really had to do with dealing with the anxiety, right? Because like I've had anxiety for as long as I can remember. It's just been an issue for me. And the way that the anxiety was manifesting was just endless work because I somehow believed that um success was going to um that was gonna protect me somehow from dying
Ooh.
or something, or getting old, because I'm now
Oh! I'm sorry. I
facing.
just sang the gospel song right there, Young Gene, because woo, that is the whew. Let me pause on that. Let me pause on that. That's deep. That is deep. Continue, please.
Yeah, because, what am I afraid of? I'm afraid of aging. What are a lot of these panic people afraid of? Like, people in their 20s are afraid of aging
Absolutely.
out of their window where they get
Because
to
they're looking
be
at
a
18-year-olds going
twenty-something.
like, "What? That's what they look like now, son of a."
Exactly. So everyone's in this panic about getting older and like what is the thing? What is the scary thing about getting older? It's like, it's things start to go one by one, like your vision starts to go, your hearing starts to go,
Mhm.
your arms and legs and your back and and your body starts to gradually break down on the road to, you know, no longer being a living body. And we don't
Woo.
talk about that. We don't talk about that in our culture.
No, we don't. We don't.
frantically do, we just frantically do all of these things to avoid thinking about it, to try to,
Yeah.
I'm
Get,
super
get,
into
get,
like
get.
hoarding shows. Like I love, shows about hoarding because like I just see in the extremity of the hoarding behavior, it's like, oh my God, if I keep this, somehow I get to stay alive. You know what I mean? Like we don't want to die.
Wow. Absolutely. Absolutely. I think every culture has, depending on what it is that props the culture up, their own unique symptom of whatever spiritual problem that culture has yet to face. And I feel like hoarding and clutter, just the gathering of objects is like such an American thing. It's spread across the world, but I have to have all this stuff. Now, I don't know. My great grandmother, one great, came out of Oklahoma during like Dust Bowl and Depression era. And so when I was a young kid, the things that she would have in the house, she saved everything because everything could be repurposed. All these egg cartons can be turned into something. I'm going to keep these sacks. These will be dresses. And she was constantly like thinking, repurposing things and gathering things to turn them into, because you never know. That's what her thing. Stores like Kmart opened and was like, I don't know about this. But like, it's kind of like, that is her version of that. Like, I have to have all these things to be prepared so I don't die. I don't die. Wow, that's great. Continue. I'm
There's
sorry if I cut you off.
there's another aspect to it as well, which is as you sort of referenced, that I'll get around to that someday. And as you get older, you start to realize, oh my God, I actually am never going to get around to that. But as long as you keep the object, you can keep the hope that maybe there's more time than you think. And I just had a thought that actually kind of ties this back into the capitalism. On one of those hoarding shows I was watching, this image will just always haunt me of a woman. Her entire living room was so piled with garbage that
Mm-hmm.
her head was almost touching the ceiling of the room, and she had one lazy boy recliner, like, in the
Mm.
middle of the sea of garbage, surrounded by plastic bags filled with her own feces, because
Wow.
that's because she
Yeah.
couldn't get to the bathroom. And um and so I and so I just remember her sitting in this recliner, head almost touching the ceiling, surrounded by bags of her own feces, like, just in this pile of garbage. And just now, remembering that image, it made me feel like that's us in this country right now.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
We're just
That's
like, if I
incredible.
just accumulate more, I'll be okay, and somehow, and we're just so accustomed. We've gotten so accustomed to being surrounded by bags of our own feces,
Yeah. Yeah.
and not being able
And
to get to
there's
the bathroom.
and there's so much of it, we're just throwing it in the ocean now. We're just putting it in the ocean, and you know what? Let's just shoot it into space. I heard this thing the other day, which I think it was about space. This scientist, I think she was a astronomer or one of these many kinds of space scientists. And she said something to the effect of, space is infinite, but the space around Earth is not. And the space that's around Earth is actually quite cluttered. We've polluted the space around Earth. So it's becoming problems. There's just too many satellites. There's just too much shit up there. It might change if we're gonna try to make space travel like a customer thing, which I feel like would take off, pun intended, because no one's sharing air. You get your own spacesuit and then you don't share air. Takes 1 hour to get from New York to Hong Kong. I know it sounds crazy, but this is the future of today's. Okay, I'm so sorry that I went into a song, but you like music. Here's the thing. Not that I want to get super duper into your, obviously with the specifics of your therapy, but is it helping you de-escalate? Are you feeling that come into fruition at all?
Oh, absolutely. Because I started doing therapy that is specifically targeting the way that trauma and anxiety function within the brain. And so there's all this kind of like brain science stuff going on.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not me sitting and talking about how anxious I feel. Although some of it is that. A lot of it is basically just uh, finding ways to uh, get the nervous system and the brain to stop thinking that you're gonna get eaten by a tiger at any moment, because that's not actually what's happening, it's like things are not functioning correctly. So, you know, um, two processes that I've found to be really helpful. One is called havening, that's relatively new, and one is called tapping, which has been around for a long
Mm,
time.
mhm, mhm.
And both of those are very good for basically just getting your brain to calm down enough so that you can remember your humanity and see the bags of feces around yourself and, you know, start maybe considering throwing some of them away.
Exactly. And in other disciplines, people might go like, "Yeah, there's a lot of shit in your aura field," which is the same thing. It's just kind of like
Yeah.
your aura field's fucked, bro. It's like someone saying you got feces, bags of feces psychologically around here. This one's filled of your mother telling you you ain't shit. This one's filled of, I guess this is a publisher telling you you ain't shit. Uh, so, Young Gene, as a because you also are an educator, which is
Mhm.
like because you're talking about aging as well, and I would assume having students, when I know a lot of people who teach, in some high schools, some colleges, and the students are the same age every year, so it's
Yeah.
kind of like, yeah, if I have a freshman class, it's going to be a bunch of freshmen, and I'm older, but they, even though it's different people, it's always going to
Mhm.
be a bunch of, so you kind of, does that make you feel your difference or the distance between you and the quote unquote younger gen?
A little bit, but actually, I think being around young people keeps you young.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because it's like you know what they're how they talk, and, you know, the way that their minds work, and you're constantly talking to them. You're just constantly talking to these young people who are just about to begin their lives. And, so I've found it to actually have the opposite effect. Like, teaching doesn't make me feel old. It actually makes me feel grateful for my age, because when I see the sort of panic and uncertainty um that they're facing, and remember that time for myself when the future was just a blank, you know,
Yeah.
it was just the future was enough of a blank that you could fill it in with whatever most horrible thing you could imagine, and you just didn't know, you know, what was gonna happen. And so I have a lot of empathy for them being in that position, and I would not trade my position for theirs for anything. You know, like, just
Mm.
to me, having to go through my 20s over and over and over again forever, like a vampire, would be terrible.
Yeah, exactly. It's a Groundhog Day or a Russian doll situation that nobody wants to be in.
You know, the thing that one thing that is just one thing that is kind of rejuvenating about teaching is just how much better than us they are. Like,
That's hilarious.
humans are getting better, you know? And when I look back to my undergrad classes and the kinds of conversations that used to happen in class where you're just like, "Oh my god, like, I am in hell right now because this is the world that I live in." The conversations in my classes are so different from those conversations. Like, these students have are so much more evolved in so many ways compared to people my age. You know, back when I was, you know, in school, and so that is very it that's very hopeful, you know? Humanity is I mean, I feel like the older people are all getting worse, and I mean, no, that's an ageist thing to say. I feel like, you know, people in government, I mean, basically Republicans, you know, like, it's I see people getting worse and worse in this country, things getting worse and worse, but the young people, they are getting better.
Okay, I have a way to complement that with an E. Um, it's Do you know who Michael Pollan is?
Yes,
He wrote some book that was about psychedelics. I can't remember exactly what the name of the book is,
right.
but he makes the argument that psychedelics are lost on the young because that's not them who need it. It's older people who need it. And his argument is, and I think about this because I'm also like into like artificial intelligence and singularity and crap like that. And I've read some of that stuff, and I think about that because I think about that in the greater scheme of culture, because technology plays such a gigantic role in our lives. And I always
Oh my
knew
God, yeah.
in some way that it was, but the way that we've integrated it, sometimes we do it faster than we actually know. And that's why, elections can go certain ways, because we were so busy getting it out there, we didn't really think about we didn't think it through, you know, in that way. So artificial intelligence, they say it's like uh, a computer, basically goes, all right, once it's had a certain amount of experiences and you put a problem in front of it, it cross references it to every experience it has. That's what people do as we get older and older. We become artificial intelligence. We've seen more, we've experienced more, we've been around, we have a pretty good idea of how things are going to go and know it, and then we make decisions not usually based on the moment, but based on the amount of experience we have. So this pure moment reaction experience becomes less and less and less and becomes deadened. And that his argument is we become artificial intelligence. But what psychedelics and some of these medicines can do is help untangle things that seem to be hardwired, help the brain kind of come alive. Now, I have done ayahuasca. I don't know if you've ever done that, Young Gene, or
I've never
interested in.
tried it, but I've heard a lot about it.
Now, one of the apparent scientific truths about it is that, there's a lot of serotonin receptors in your brain, and they die or become deadened as you age. Well, guess what? One of the things that ayahuasca does is it helps those repair. They've actually proven that it can turn on supposedly dead serotonin receptors in your brain. Also, there's more serotonin receptors in your stomach than there are in your brain. So when you put it in the stomach, it's like it literally opens up more capacity for you to accept happiness. That's if you're talking about brain truth. I love your face right now. I love that people
I'm
could
just
see
like,
this.
I'm just like, I gotta go get some ayahuasca immediately. Cause,
you got to
cause,
do it right though. You got to do it right, Young Gene. I'm telling you. What are you gonna say though?
well, actually, before I go on, how do you do it right?
Well, that's the thing, because we're talking about something like what ayahuasca is. It's DMT, right? Except it's a concentration of DMT that lasts a very long time. Now, this is
Hmm.
something that's been around for centuries, practiced by cultures that mostly have been murdered, or at least sequestered to certain places up and down North and South America, Central America as well. So there's all these different cultures that have access to it and all these different approaches, just like all these different therapies. So it's kind of like there is no one way that is going to work for everyone, but you
Hmm.
always got to make sure that you're at least getting involved with reputable people. Like do your research, like due diligence. You wouldn't take a drug that someone just handed you, unless that's what you're doing that night. But like mostly if it was something that you were integrating into your life, you'd probably be like, well, let me see the scientific evidence and talk to a couple experts who know this. It's like that. So that's one of the ways to do it right. Now, the way that I do it, luckily I had access to that stuff. But it is kind of, I will say, you mentioned, tapping, and what was the other one? Havening?
Havening.
Havening. So there's EMDR, that's another new
Yep.
therapy. There's somatic experiencing. There's something I heard of called NARM. So all of these seem to be, as far as did a couple of those, it's kind of similar to ayahuasca. Some of the experiences are the things that'll open up because it's are similar. Now, this is something I gotta say. don't try this at home. These I endorse these ideas, but not anybody else. I just want to be legally sound. I don't even know if that makes any sense. But yeah, I mean, we could talk more about that later, especially because I am curious about, and this is part of the thing about today and podcasting is we don't have an infinite amount of time. We gotta live our lives, and I'm very happy that you came to talk to me again. And this was a fantastic conversation. I wanted to ask you if there was anything that you wanted to point people towards that has to do with young Jean Lee, or anything that young Jean Lee might be interested in.
Um, well, I did want to say like a quick response to what you just said about
Oh yeah,
the
go
the
ahead.
deadening, the deadening, which
Yes.
is you just answered a great mystery for me. Because something that I think about all the time is remember when you were really little and you were like watching your first movies, hearing your first music, like, for me it was watching my first plays. Um, and just, like, how everything blew your mind, like, no matter how and how it just blew your mind, and and how the older you get because of what you're talking about, this buildup of associations and how we're turning into, artificial intelligence, now when you see a movie, you can no longer have that absolutely amazing experience of,
Mm.
seeing a movie for the first time as a kid because of all those associations. But your whole analysis just explains why that's the case. And I'm
Wow.
curious if these mind altering drugs can bring back any of that experience of being able to see something
Well,
and
I think
just be amazed.
what I would say is that they open you up to your own ability to do such. I think that you can summon up those things without the use of any of these things, but it takes a very dedicated practice, and like
Mhm.
some discipline that a lot of people don't have. You know what I mean? This is why some people leave society to go do such practices. Um, but I think that you can. I'm that's very curious because I always think about like driving to work for the first time. Like if you live at a place and you work at a place, the first time you drive there, it feels like, where is it? Everything's forever. You're seeing the trees and the other cars and all the landmarks for the first time. The second time, it does not feel as long. It does not feel as long. And then the third time, you're like, how long is this? Oh, it's only 10 minutes. The first time you weren't thinking about the time. You were just taking in literally everything. And that's how I drive, at least. The first time I go somewhere, it's like, it's new. And then the second time I go there, I'm like, I've done this. It's already done in my head. And then it becomes routine. Then I'm thinking about, it only takes 10 minutes to go. I'll leave in 5. So I'm just thinking about it in terms of practicality. And that's always my example is like, how do you go somewhere for the first time? How do you see something for the first time? And it's getting in touch with that stuff is really hard. But I think that some of the stuff that you're talking about, tapping, can
Mhm.
help a person get to those places. And I'll tell you some other stuff offline that
Okay.
is wild.
Great. And
And
sorry, I didn't answer your final question, but hopefully
yes,
you
which is to
can
promote
edit
yourself.
it back to that. But so in the spirit of our conversation, instead of ending with self promotion, I'm going to promote um, a book written by someone else who is now no longer with us. It's a book called Healing Back Pain by Dr. John Sarno. And this is a book that when I started having chronic pain, everybody was like, you got to read this book. You read this book, your pain goes away. And I was just going to physical therapists and getting MRIs and chiropractors, and like my whole life had become about pain management. And everybody was like, you gotta read this book. And I was just like, I'm not gonna read that book. It sounds ridiculous. Um, and and there are various like triggers for chronic pain, and one of my triggers became lying down to go to sleep. So I would lie down to go to sleep, and I would like get horrifying spasms. So when that started, I was like, I am so screwed. If my trigger is lying down to go to sleep, I am just screwed for life. I'm gonna read. And so I just, on my Kindle, middle of the night, Dr. John Sarno, read like a third of the book, and my pain went away and it never came back. So um, I don't know if it I don't know, and there, there would be, an occasional like twinge or episode or whatever, but that kind of, I never had to get another MRI. I never had to go to another physical therapist or chiropractor or any of that stuff because, um, uh, so I was a non-believer and I resisted reading that book for literally years, and I am now completely pain free.
Hey everybody, it's Baron again. I'm alone in a room with nobody else but the voices inside my head as I try to do what I want to be a succinct little middle piece because I want to get to the Katrina thing. Um, Here's what I wanted to say. I wanted you to hear who Young Jean was before I told you what she has done. Okay? So I talked to Young Jean months ago for this very podcast, but it was before I had things together like I have them today. And it was a little bit more of a straightforward interview in which she kind of talked about, where she grew up, how she kind of got into playwriting and all that stuff. And that stuff is very interesting. And you can find many other interviews with Young Jean in which she talks about those things. I just wanted to talk to a person I see as a quality human being who's very admirable, who's very, a quality human being who's very admirable. And she's also just impressive. She's written a lot of different plays. She's the first Asian American woman to be produced on Broadway, y'all. I didn't say that before. You can Google it and find that shit out. That's easy shit. But she had a play called Straight White Men that was on Broadway. Um, the play I saw that was called The Shipment toured around the world. She has a band called Future Wife that I think I might have talked about before. She she's fascinating, and I like that she defies definition because she's less about, and this is kind of what I look at Young Jean and I think these are the lessons that I think of for myself. It's less about the category I want something to fit into. It's less about the label I think I'm supposed to be wearing on my shoulders. And it's more about what I want to say and how I want to say it. Because here's the thing about form, y'all. You have to know form, sure. But form can't be your master. Form can't be your master. Okay, guys, I am getting tired, so I'm going to move on right now to Katrina Davis and Catty Corner.
You're so silly.
I'm so silly because Catty Corner.
Yes.
What do you want to call this part of the show then?
I don't want to call it anything. I want them to just be like, yeah, Baron's done talking, and now they know. I understand that it's so. I would like it to evolve.
You know what?
On its own,
Baron's
into something
done talking.
that doesn't.
That's what you could call
Can
it.
it be Baron's done talking? That here's the thing: is I would love for it to evolve into be called something that doesn't make one of my eyes twitch, but I also can appreciate you picking something that I'm like, no, please don't do that. And you're like, oh no, that's what it's going to be. And I'm like, okay, great. And I just have to listen to that every week. I do feel like that is also very telling of our relationship.
Yeah. I mean, it's very sibling-ish. I am intentionally
Yes.
torturing you for
Yes.
no good reason other than it entertains me.
Yes, exactly.
But something that makes you go, ugh, and laugh.
Yes.
Because it's so dumb that you can't.
That is a very large pizza pie of me laughing at Baron is being angry that I'm laughing for at least a couple seconds.
I think that's how most people laugh at what I have to say. I always felt that way in stand-up. Like, that's why I always like puns, because they make people mad. And it's not even necessarily the pun that is... Sometimes it is. Like, if I'm hanging out with, say, Mike Kaplan, then it is about legit wordplay.
Oh, I love Mike.
But if I'm like
So
in front of
funny.
an audience, sometimes it's like, because I also like to throw them in where you don't expect it. It's kind of like we're having a conversation and then I like flick your earlobe and you're like, "What? What just happened?" So it's kind of
Yes.
like that. It always hits people weird because they're not expecting to hear a pun in the middle of
Yes.
whatever the hell I was talking about. And then I also intentionally over deliver it. I do it as
Ah, ah.
theatrically. I do as theatrically as possible because it's so funny to me that people can't tell if I think it's funny what I'm saying.
You conversationally stare down the barrel of the lens every time you deliver a pun.
You dag nabbed right, I do. Um, by the way, so happy whatever day this is.
Yeah. Oh my goodness, I'm mad delirious
Yeah, what does that mean for
on
you?
days and times. Cause I have been sleeping. I like my sleep's been off.
Mm.
So, like, I'll sleep, but who knows when. So, like, I took like a 2-hour nap and felt great, but then I stayed up till 4, like working on stuff. Like, I was like, oh, I feel great and awake. But then the sun came so early. So now I'm mildly disoriented.
Wow.
But I'll
Wow.
either be a little tired all day today or like nap at some point and then be like, okay, don't dick around.
Okay, how about this? Let me ask you this. If this pandemic for you has been a novel and every stage that you've gone through has been a chapter,
Oh, wow.
what is the title of this chapter?
Ooh, I like that the way you put that question, Baron. I think this chapter would be like, I'm trying to think of a word for it.
Caddy
'Cause I
corner?
feel like I hate you so much. I know that you're gonna know a word for it that, like, 4 people know, like, some SAT level word
Oh,
for it
come on.
probably,
No, no,
or
no.
like, "Actually, Pythagorean had a idea about this that no one knows about,"
Okay, it was
it's kind of
Pythagoras,
like
but
I
his
hate you so
theorem
much.
is the Pythagorean theorem.
You feel better? Are you
Regardless.
proud of yourself?
No, I'm
Um
just going into the bit that we're talking
No,
about.
you know it. I
Honestly,
know. No,
Katrina, it's
but
not
it's like,
about,
you
it's
know
not,
what
no,
it
go ahead.
feels like the end of 28 days later when like shit isn't totally over, but they've found and created this safe place for themselves.
Hmm.
It feels like a peaceful lull. That's what it feels like. Because I know that on a grand scale, we're not at all done with everything that's happening. But personally, I feel like I went through a bunch of different like stages of things, and now I'm just in this place where the new year started. There's a lot of things that could be good, like on the horizon, and I'm taking a lot of things that I learned about myself last year in the pandemic and like starting to try to actually apply them. So
Hmm.
there's like a hopefulness amidst all of this stuff that is definitely has a sequel coming. You know what I mean?
Sequel? You're talking about a freaking threequel. This
Yeah.
shit's an
I mean,
epic.
yeah.
This is like
Yeah.
two trilogies now. This damn thing. It's kind of
Double
like,
trilogy.
yeah, it's like those Star Wars movies from the 90s where you're like, why did they do this? Why did they redo the originals?
Are we okay? I don't know enough about
You don't
Star
have
Wars to
to.
reference the correct one, but are we living in the Phantom Menace? Which one do people hate? Did I do it right? Yay.
That's hilarious. It's funny because those titles are so dramatic, but it doesn't have to be. We don't have to think about like because Phantom Menace in and of itself, again, peaceful lull I think is the name of this chapter. And I also wanted to come back to you talk about feeling like disoriented, and I feel like
Mhm.
that like disorientation and the peaceful lull, the disorientation is what I would call this this chapter. But Phantom Menace, first of all, the word menace in and of itself has like particular significance to me, regardless of Star
Mm.
Wars or anything. So, like, a menace is because I always think about this. This is coming off of Young Gene Lee, who is a playwright, as well, filmmaker, but also, like she's a filmmaker, but I met her and know her as a playwright. And so there's this writer who writes a thing called A Comedy of Menace. And this is one of my favorite writers, Harold Pinter. And so Comedy of Menace means something is wrong, but nobody can explain what it is, which is why we all just make things up, make up things to talk
Mm,
about, to act like this thing isn't happening. That's sort of
okay.
that's sort of like the feeling that he would write to. And it's because he came
Mhm.
out of World War II. He was a kid during World War II. And then he was being evacuated and shit out of England, and no adult could explain to him why. There's someone coming. Why? They're just coming. They hate you. But
Mhm.
why? They just do. And what you have to do is go to your aunt's castle in Scotland. It's like, but I don't know her. It's fine. She's family.
Yeah.
Goodbye. I love you. So it's kind of
And
like,
I do feel like there's a certain idea, especially when you're younger, but that we are also, I think, experiencing right now as adults, when you can sense that the people that are supposed to be in charge definitely
mm,
don't know what they're doing.
yeah, yeah.
Like, when whatever level of trust you had at some point, you just get the sense like, wait a minute, you're flying by the seat of your pants too. And the second that security kind of goes away and you realize no one knows what to do, that is like a new level of thing that I think a lot of people are freaking out about or
Mm-hmm.
resisting right now, because I think that that's a problem that a lot of people are having with questioning authority in
Mm.
general, is that the idea of it makes them feel safe. Is like, no, I need to be able to trust these people to blindly do stuff that I don't want to pay attention to.
Well, but that's the whole
And the
point.
idea that,
That's why we vote for a
yeah,
mofo. That's why
right,
we
right,
campaign
to
and all that
be
stuff.
hands off.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like can you represent me? That's the
Yeah, can you do this so I cannot? And the fact that a lot of us are saying like, no, you need to be a present, active part of this because these people cannot be blindly trusted.
Mhm, mhm.
I think that worries people, is like, no, we're supposed to be able to trust these people. And a lot of us are saying, no, you can't. That's the whole point. And what they're really arguing back is a disconnect with like a security within themselves, because
Hmm.
they want to be able to trust them also. Does that make sense?
Makes total sense, but it makes total sense because it has to do with, well, first of all, trust. That's the word that you're
Yeah,
bringing up
that
a lot.
security. Yeah, yeah,
And I
yeah.
think that the idea of trust in and of itself, I don't think people
Is
know.
something that I consider a figment to a luxury, depending on who. Like, I think that you can absolutely trust people, but I think that people take it to a level that I do actually think is hilariously delusional.
Hmm.
Like, the amount of trust that people have for a thing that, in my head, not on it probably is gonna sound cynical, but it's like, you never should have had an idea to trust that much to begin with. Like, I think it's funny that you ever instilled that much faith in an institution that large to begin with, having your interests in heart as an individual. So, like, I'm already not laughing, but like, what? Why would you ever
Hmm.
trust that?
Hmm. Hmm.
And
It,
some people are like, "No, I absolutely trust that." And I'm like, "Huh?" It's I feel like it's the moral equivalent of, I had friends back home in Florida that never locked their doors, and they would be like, "Why?" And they would be like, "Oh, like, why would someone ever break in?" And I would be like, "Why wouldn't they?" They literally need no reason. The only reason people ever take something is because they didn't have it. That's the only reason they need. Is to just take something because they wanted it. That's the only barrier they have, and the idea that you're like, "No, someone just wouldn't do that," blows my mind, and I feel like that's what's happening on a larger scale, is people being like, "No, like, why would that happen?" And you're like, "Why would that not immediately happen?" By,
hmm.
like, human nature and what we do when we're given power or opportunity with, you know
Well,
no
it is.
checks.
I'll say that is incredibly cynical. You wanted to apologize. You wanted to apologize before about. I don't want to sound cynical, and then you said the most cynical shit I've ever heard.
Oh,
However,
wow.
no, no, no. But it's okay to be cynical
So
because
funny.
cynicism gets a bad rap. I think no, because I think that cynicism can be motivation. It can motivate you because the thing about, at least for me, I'll say, there's an end to cynicism. There's a point where you've run out of not caring, where
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
you want to care again.
Yeah, yeah,
You
yeah.
want to trust.
Mhm.
But the thing is that your life, your actual experiences are like, well, that hasn't gone well. you know,
That's exactly what happens in your head. You're like, "Yeah, but if I'm so cynical, then why am I right so often?" Like,
hmm.
you show me like, that's how I feel about a lot of things in terms of positivity is, like, I will resolve judgment from the outside and protect, like, what would be, like, my feelings getting hurt, but also, the second I'm right, I'm like, "Did everyone see that?" Like,
Well,
this is
okay.
why I'm this way.
This is a thing like no, because you're such a comic. And like, and that's there's this similar there are a lot of similarities that I feel, with comics because I feel like there's something about us, you know what I mean, that brought us to this thing, like this obsession with reading between the lines, this obsession with not
Mm.
easily accepting what has been told to us, or sometimes a comfort with ambiguity.
Mhm.
I'm
I feel but also these are all not all, but a lot of the things you just said are things why I was listening to this episode and being like, I fuck with Young Jean so hard because I feel like she was saying things on that similar level. Like,
go ahead, talk about it.
well, I mean, just I was, like, yelling, like, stuff that she was like, I was, like, yelling responses to her even though she couldn't hear me, but when she was talking about, like, over communication and boundaries with work and
Mm, mm.
like, saying, like, "Oh, I'm glad that people are kind of, like, not rushing into that," but when she was like, "Oh, people are so into this," it was like, "Yeah, because people are lonely."
Yes.
Like, there are people that are sick of their families and this, that, and the other, and so, like, work like, the same way there were dudes that you were like, "Why is this dude always at work?" And then one day you realize he hated his home life.
Ta.
People can't do that anymore, and so they're like, "Meetings, meetings, meetings. I wanna
Hmm.
see you, da, da, da," and it's like, I don't wanna see if you aren't that person, it seems weird. It's like, why are you forcing all of this extra communication on me? And it's because they're trying to escape the stuff that they can't physically escape anymore. They used to be able to go to work and be a whole individual without their family and stuff, and now their family is tops in the next room. And so they're like using everyone at work to kind of like enhance their escapism, I think. And I feel
Wow.
like Young Jean was on the other side of that, being like, why are y'all trying to take all my time up? And I felt so bad for her. So she was saying that, and I was like, because they're lonely, Young Jean. And I was like yelling.
Hmm. But for her, it's like, she's very much, she seems like she's a person with a damn mission. She just has this kind of frankness and this directness that somehow she marries to
I
her
love it
her
so much.
sensitivity, so it's kind
Mhm.
of like there's something that's really, she just feels like she's like on her way somewhere all the time, you know what I mean?
Well,
But go ahead,
yeah.
go ahead.
Oh,
But I mean that in a good
like,
way, not like in a like she's
yes.
anxious, but like just like she's
Well,
fucking solid.
there is such a level of intent
Mm,
to
mm,
everything. Because even when she was talking about work, I'm sure that's, like, another part of her work, but, like, when she was talking about her students and everything, she
mm-hmm.
reminded me so much of the things that my mom says about being a teacher and how she's like, "That is what has kept me young in my mind, is constantly hearing what people 20 years younger than me are saying about this, that, and the other. And not I think that it also, in terms of what she was saying about older people, that are, like, writing legislation and stuff like that and, like, voting on things that are affecting us right now, I think teaching keeps you in the conversation in a way that you have to not totally have to respect, but have to listen and actually give merit to the thoughts of someone way younger than you. It allows you to be less dismissive of younger generations, I think, being a teacher and hearing so many different young people allows you to not say, oh, well, young people are this. Cause you're like, no, I know young people that I love. And, I really want something more for. And I think that the older you get, the opportunities to see those people as real people
Mhm.
gets farther and fewer between sometimes. And the older we get, we know less people in general. The people that we've known die. We, like we're talking about, grow and hurt from stuff and cut ourselves off from people and build up all of these walls and stuff. And I
Mhm.
think that a lot of the work that young Gene does and a lot of the work that people are kind of forcing themselves to do because of the last year we had, volunteering, being a part of your community in different ways, all of these things I think are ways to keep your mind from making those schemas so rigid as you get older
Mm.
and allowing you to, like, create prejudice about people that you don't know anything about because you continue to learn things about them. It, like, keeps you in the loop in a way that I think is really important.
Here's a
And I
word
think that
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 comes to mind.
speaks, I don't know, yeah, like, a lot to I feel like she had such a well-rounded perspective and way of thinking about things
Yeah, you
because of
seem
that,
very
maybe.
moved.
I loved her. Or them, I don't know who they are. I just listened to their voice,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
oh
Uh,
my gosh, so fantastic.
I believe she's she. But,
Yeah.
what you're talking about, here's a word that comes to mind. What you're thinking, what you're saying when you're doing all this stuff. I think the word that came to mind was respect. And I think that what maybe Young Jean's talking about is she has to respect people who are younger than her. But what your
Mhm.
mother is talking about is she has to respect someone who's younger. And because it's very easy to dismiss because we have
Mhm.
age, experience, blah, blah, blah. And you are 16. What the hell could you possibly know? But if you just respect this person's opinion, they might surprise you. And
Mhm.
perhaps for a teacher, and maybe that's one of the, it's not only that you are helping, if you will, steward, mold these minds
Yeah.
and because you're seeing this person possibly before the world has beaten them down.
Yes,
And
hopefully.
so, yes. And so, I would always assume that I want to, if I was a teacher, I'd want to always make sure that students remembered this part of themselves, that is them. And that because I
Mhm.
would be able to see it, I think, and I would want to nurture that part of them, to make sure that they maintain that piece of them through their whole life. Because there
Right.
is that thing that I think a lot of teachers, some teachers can do that. They see like you've got something that you need to not let go of, and
Yes.
I can see, but they can't tell you what it is because you're young. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yep.
You don't know yet. So it's kind of like
Yes.
I can respect you, but also understand that you have certain limits. But at the same time, I think
Mhm.
for the adult, it shows them their own limits. And I think that, Young Gene teaches college. And so it's kind
Mhm.
of like college students are always formulating the ideas that become very important over the next decade. So it's kind of like all this language, all these ways of thinking about culture and self. It's like if you are around people who are always experiencing that, they're number one trying to define themselves, but also creating new language about it. And then you can, be like, well, I also have this knowledge over here. That's why you're in my class, right?
Mhm.
Let me show you some of this. Let me
Yeah.
show you some
And
of
you're so
this.
fun.
And then,
Speaking of that, no, and I do feel like I totally understood what she was saying when she said being in their presence can also make you feel grateful for where you are.
Hmm.
And I think that that's so important to not, and I feel like we're kind of moving away from this, but people, like a generation above us had a more or maybe had more of a tendency to be obsessed with their 20s and trying to like maintain whatever identity they had at that point in their lives. And now I think our society is kind of leaning more into um saying that those aren't necessarily the best years, that those years are for learning and becoming who you are, and they're great for what they are, but that there's so much more of your life to be enjoyed past 25. I think we're kind of moving more into that, but I loved what she said about kind of seeing where they're at and realizing, being grateful for not being in that exact level of panic, of like the unknowing of what you're going to do with your life. But also I was recognizing the cycle in what she was saying about what she's going to therapy for right now, and being like, yeah, we just keep going through, not like, oh, it's never ending, but we go through different versions of that cycle, because she's watching college kids be like, who am I, what am I going to do with my whole life, oh my god, and being like, I understand. I went through that. That's really terrifying. At the same time that she is going through a new one of, oh my gosh, I can't stop working. Things never stop. I haven't slept. And being like, oh, I'm going to go to therapy and figure it out, and what that cycle looks like, and what that cycle will look like when she's 60 and she has a mentor or someone that's 35 and going through, and they're like, oh yeah, I remember when I did that. So I was kind of listening to her and looking forward to who she'll be teaching in her future, and how we're just constantly going through these cycles, and how that, what you're saying, that level of respect is meant to help each other. You're not meant to leave those people behind and stop talking to them. You're meant to be open with them, and they're meant to be able to be open with you so that you can make it easier for them. And like that, what if that is what is really, because I was also listening to something the other day that was saying that humans are getting better because, oh, no, no, no. Was that Young Jean that she was talking about the conversation she was having? And how people are so much better than they were when
Oh, well, she's saying
they were
that
her age.
she's saying that her students are better than
They're
she
having
was.
or having more evolved. Yes, I feel like that can be a part of it. If you are not left to your own devices and don't have that um kind of like rift that the generation before had, where it's like, you rotten kids, and it's like, F you, old man. If you don't have that and you can learn from each other, you will continue to have generations of people that are better, younger, maybe.
Hmm. Yeah, again, I feel like this, I'm still thinking about respect, and I'm thinking like to be, maybe teaching can help you remember to learn. You know, like if you
Yeah.
respecting somebody else makes you, you can't, they say you can't love someone unless you love yourself, right? It's true
Mhm.
for first of all, I don't think that's just a saying. I think that's a fucking warning. Like I think that's like a, hey,
Yes.
you can't love someone unless you love yourself. And it's just kind of like, oh shit, I better figure that out then. But
Mhm.
it's the same with respect. So it's like you have to have, if you're going to respect somebody, you have to figure out what self-respect is. And if you figure out what self-respect is, then you can respect someone. It's a circle. It's another cycle and loop.
Mhm.
And so to teach is to continue to learn, you know, because
Mm.
if you're, again, like having to respect somebody and put their feelings, their knowledge, because it's also like, I think when you're talking about that 20 stuff, we're talking about a lot of external things. We're talking about a lot of external ideas of what you're supposed to be and how your life is supposed
Yep.
to look, feel, what you're supposed to say, think. And I feel like in my 20s, and I think you're right, I think that people are letting this go more. I think that
Mhm.
there is this thing about growing up. There is this thing about being an adult and
Mhm.
having this, because of course, probably a lot of people are always dismissing you too, but there is,
Yeah, it's like the validation, I think, well,
and
for
there's
some
something about
people,
the
I feel like,
external
yeah.
stuff, you know, where it's kind of like, I think we get older and we go, oh, I was so focused on being 40 that now that I'm 40, I should have focused on being 20. You know what I mean? Like I should have just been
Mm.
who I was and stopped trying to like
Uh-huh.
be this other thing. I think there's something in between that. But again, I think this also comes back to this trust thing because, even just in terms of education, this idea that we send our kids to a place and we trust that they're going to learn and we
Mhm.
trust that those people are going to teach them and take care of them and nurture them. And of course, that breaks in I don't know how many different ways,
Mhm.
but I have a big thing. I don't know how I feel about it yet exactly. Education, the education system has always been super important to me. That's my political cause or one of my causes because I think that what it is that we teach children and how it's not what necessarily, it's how. It's all this external stuff. It's the casings of school. You know, we teach things that we don't know we're teaching. We diminish things that we don't think we're diminishing. We
And I think sometimes we're diminishing things that people do know what they're diminishing. They just don't have value in the system that they are preparing them to succeed in. Which kind of I loved about what Young Jean said about like it's more like, yeah, we know what those things are, but who cares?
mm,
It's like,
mm,
I mean, I'm very aware that you are an amazing writer, but we need computer engineers. So I that doesn't fit into what we're trying to do here. Like I think that in terms of a lot of the
point of
things that
order,
we
being a
value, the
computer engineer
system.
is being a writer. That's what I say.
Ah,
It's
very
being a
okay. I'm
sculptor.
sorry. Sorry to all the computer engineers out there. But you know what I mean in terms of like if you are an artist that has these talents that don't necessarily have a immediate space in capitalism, you're going to have to work harder to even seek out the education that flourishes that in the public school system in America.
Hmm.
Like you can pay extra to go to some other school, but if you just go to standard public school and you're an amazing painter, someone else has probably had to notice that. You know what I mean? Like, unless you're gonna go on like you have a very special teach. Like, I think that that's another thing that makes teachers so important
Mm.
that they know that they have this additional responsibility to, like you were saying before, pull kids aside and be like, look, you're good at something that's gonna take you somewhere. You might not get the tools you need in this building, but
Yeah.
like, do not forget that kind of
Well,
thing.
we got to wrap up, but this also
Oh yeah,
brings up
sorry.
this. No, 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 no. Don't apologize. I love
I feel
talking to
like
you.
we tangent so
We're
hard
supposed to. That's
and
the
there's
point of
never
this.
enough time. There's
No,
never enough
there's
time.
another
Okay, cool.
podcast though, Katrina. There will be another
Okay.
conversation. Yeah, because I think that what we're talking about teachers, but we're not talking about the educate. And then that's the thing. There's a difference between teachers and there's a difference between the
Mm,
education system, the school system.
mhm.
And I
Yeah.
think that, the school system gets in the way of teachers, and
Yes.
that also teachers sometimes get in the way of the school system. But
Mm.
public education in and of itself is a giant fucked thing
Mhm.
because it's very simple. Or, this simple thing that I learned a couple years ago made everything fucking make sense to me. Schools are paid for by property taxes. So it's like if you are in a very nice neighborhood, then you're going to have a very nice school. And if you're in a very bad neighborhood, you're going to have a very bad school. And it's
Mhm.
just, and boy, redlining starts to make a difference here. Housing discrimination, what schools can pay what. Then there's also like thinking about like a school superintendent is an elected position. Somebody runs to be the head of schools. And so it's kind of like, then they have to campaign or they have to say, this is what I
And I
believe
have voted for
education is.
multiple superintendents and been like, I hope that first off, I have no kids and just being like, okay, hope this person's cool.
It
I
doesn't,
have thought that multiple times. Parents sound off if you think that you should have to have kids to vote for the superintendent. Because honestly, I'll leave it up to y'all. I wasn't even that mad
I
about it. I've thought that so
don't
many times.
think it's true because you know what, Katrina, you were a kid. And
That's
every
true. And I
child
do,
grows up.
it was, yeah.
hopefully.
That's fair.
So it's
No,
kind
very
of like
valid. Okay,
you get to
cool.
say like, okay, well, who do I want these people to be in 25 years?
Yeah, and I will have to live with those people,
Yeah.
so thank
When I
you.
go into the
I
coffee
feel
shop, is this motherfucker gonna be rude, crude,
and
or super smooth?
or will it be somebody that I have no problem respecting as a
Hey,
young person 20 years younger than me?
there you go. And with that, Katrina, I think we have caddied to this corner into the
See,
universe.
look, I already hate it less, and I'm mad that I hate it less. You're fungusing me right now.
That's another t-shirt. We gotta get a screen printer. I hate it less, and I'm mad that I hate it less.
Oh,
Boom.
I love you, Baron.
Love you back, Katrina. That was okay. So, like, I'm kind of confused about what you're doing because, like, you have like a day job, don't you?
I did, and then I got laid off, like,
Past tense. Wait a minute. You got laid off?
yeah, like a month ago,
Oh my God.
maybe-ish. And like a little bit less than a month ago.
Congratulations and
Thank
condolences.
you. Kind of both. Well, okay. Like on paper, condolences, but it's
So,
fine. I'm kicking it.
what does that
It's
mean for you though? Like, you get unemployment too, right?
I mean, I will. It's packed. Like I've registered, but I don't really know what else is going on. Oh, actually, no, you reminded me. Yeah, I can do some more stuff now. But it's like you gotta wait for information to come in that they need and like be able to fill out squares. And I was just like, man. But it did take me like
Fill out squares. Yes. Okay.
it's like I don't have the information for that square yet, and I like log off. But it did take me like a week and a half just to register. Like it was just so I think the system was so overloaded that it
Oh
just
yeah, it's
wasn't
bogged down as hell.
accepting it wasn't accepting any new people. But yeah, I'll get all that figured out. But I feel like
Yeah. What do you feel like?
that was kind of what I was talking about in terms of the peaceful lull, because it's like on paper this should technically be gnarly. First off, it's like like I was talking to one of my friends, and she was like, "Oh my god, you got laid off," and it's like, but honestly, who hasn't? Like everyone's gotten laid off at this point. I can't
True. True.
like get in line, the unemployment line.
Hey,
But
just as long as it doesn't become a breadline. The thing is though, Katrina, like I'm kind of happy for you though, because what are
I'm
you
kind of
doing in the
happy for me
meantime?
too. Yeah, I'm kind of taking this time to cuz I was also it's weird. Dude, multiple times during this pandemic I've felt this weird like premonition type ish going on where like
Hmm.
right before shutdown, no joke. So like we shut down like came home in like March. It like last February, I woke up at like 3 a.m., like sat up out of a dead sleep and was like, I'm gonna move my apartment around. Moved all of my furniture around till like 7 a.m. Started doing all this stuff and was like, what is wrong with me? Like, just felt this like weird, like tick go off inside my
Hmm.
body. Totally reorganized my apartment and then would go to work every day and be like, I love it so much in here now. And like, I never get to be here.
Hmm.
Like, I can't wait till I have time to enjoy the space that I've like totally recreated for myself. And then the shutdown happened, and I was like, "Oh my gosh." Like, I wouldn't have enjoyed being home as much if I hadn't have done all that stuff before.
Okay.
So
Okay.
then at the end of the year, I started doing a bunch of freelance stuff, just like a bunch of opportunities came up to do extra work and I wasn't home for the holidays. And this was like, yeah, sure, I'll do it. Like, who cares? And at one point, it was almost too much work where I was like, why did I take on all of this extra work that I don't have to have? And then I got laid off. And I was like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
I guess that's
Mm-hmm.
why I did that. And so now I get to like
Hmm.
kind of have like I'm freelancing still, but like have way less of a job. And I would maybe be freaking out, but I'm not. I'm like, okay, well, that
Well, you
happened. And
feel
now,
covered. You like covered yourself in all
yeah,
these
yeah,
different
yeah, yeah, yeah.
ways.
Yeah,
You
like,
you prepared as
uh,
fuck.
I didn't know what I was doing though. It was kind of like I was going off this weird instinct of like, I don't know what I'm doing. This feels weird, but I'm just gonna go with it because it felt right to say yes to all of these things. And
Hmm.
then like 3 months later, be like, okay, cool. Glad that happened. So yeah, I feel like
And
I'm
next time you're like,
now
"Ooh, what is wrong with me?" I want you to stop and say, "What is right with me?" You know what I mean? 'Cause it seems like Nothing wrong. Something's right.
I don't well, and so now I feel like I'm kind of using this opportunity to hope maybe like I feel like this is like you said this security. I am a very prepared person. I was raised to, even in terms of creativity, be like, "Oh, okay, that's something you like to do. That's real cute. You still have to have a day job, like starving artist shit." In terms
Mm.
of like you can do what you love, but you always have to have like
A plan, a fallback
money
plan,
and
plan
health
B.
insurance and paycheck. Yeah, you have to have a
Oh
paycheck
yeah, you,
coming.
you gotta have a support, a
Yes,
net,
yes.
safety
What are
net.
you gonna do for food? Exactly. So I can't shake that mentality.
Hmm.
But this has allowed me to be like, okay, so what is like a new version of that that gives me in it more free time? I'm doing more of like the day job stuff I do is more closely related to stuff that I love innately and kind of being like, do I have to do this the way that capitalism has told me I have to? Or can
Mm.
I survive happily in another way? And it's really exciting to be, and I feel very grateful and lucky to be in a position that I'm like able to do this. Cause also, like, I live by myself. All I have to do is keep a cat alive. But I'm kind of
And you,
trying
you
really
mean yourself?
hard. Another cat. I hate you so much.
That pause just for the listeners.
Was
If this was a sitcom, you would have seen Katrina just stare me down.
Oh my god.
But you were saying all you got to do is keep
I
two
love
cats
you.
alive.
Yes, 2 cats alive, and yeah, it's kind of exciting to be in a place where I can figure something else out for myself and be like, if I work hard enough at this for myself, I can live life a different way.
Hmm.
And I think that that's something that a lot of us are told is like you can only do at a very high precipice even. That like you can do that, but you have to be famous. You have to make it. And it's like I feel like living a version of, oh, okay, well, can I just like be by myself and still be able to sustain in a way that isn't like a 9 to 5
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But
and
right now
roller
you're
skate for lunch breaks and I
yeah.
don't know, like just like watch movies and have fun and have that be my whole life and not have that be something that I scrap to get pieces of. Cause that's more what it feels like when you have a day job is like I work like 40 plus hours a week so that I can fly to bars and do what I love for like 3 hours and then come home tired and sleep and do it all over again, which I don't really mind because like you got to do what you got to do. And I still love that much of it.
But you're trying to
But
make that your
the idea of
focus.
wanting even more of that so is something that I don't think I've ever actually entertained that it does seem like a
Mm.
dream. I don't allow myself to dream illogically. So maybe it's just that now I'm actually manifesting something that a lot of people have been like, I'm going to do it. And I'm like, that's real cute. But now it seems more realistic. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to see if I can make this shit work.
So your cynicism has met opportunity.
A reality. Yeah. Like it's like now I feel within me that like if I don't fuck this up, I can make something happen. And that is like
Hmm.
really exciting to just be in here by myself, being like, all right, dude, this is it. This is it. You cannot bitch for the rest of your life because this
Katrina,
is your
I'm gonna be
chance to do it.
super, super annoying right now. I'm so damn sorry.
Okay.
You
Okay, I'm
said,
ready.
if I don't fuck this up. So
Uh-huh.
you've phrased your opportunity in a negative way.
Uh-huh.
It,
Okay. I
you're
mean,
saying,
yeah.
if I don't fuck this up, as if that's the first option that you thought of, is not fucking it up, as opposed to what? What's the positive version?
That's my way of saying it's go time. It's like this is what people talk about happening all the time. This is your moment. That's my way of bringing myself to the present of
Mm.
not coasting through it. I mean, like, oh yeah, I just didn't do that. It's like, no, this is it.
But you got to enjoy
So like
yourself,
you
though,
have to
Katrina.
do, yeah.
Because that's what
Well,
you're talking
that
about.
to
You're
me
trying
is
to figure out, how do I
exhilarating.
enjoy myself and do all my
That to me
stuff?
is like exhilarating. It
Mm,
feels
mm.
like before a football game starts and I'm like, yes, this
Oh,
is the
right. You're from
work
Florida. I forgot.
that Yes, this is my and one commercial for myself in my apartment where I just speak very aggressively to myself when I'm excited. But that is what it is. It's like that, all right, bitch. That like this is
Yeah, do it. But
it.
give me, give me, give
Like,
me, give me, give me a
yes.
speech right now. You're Katrina looking into the bathroom
I
mirror.
look at my list and I look at my list and I'm like, all right, this like I really do say like, okay, like don't fuck this up or like you have to do this by the end of the or like if you do this by the end of today, like even last night I was finishing all this stuff. I mean, like I'm tired, but I was looking at it and be like, oh, this is so good. Oh, I love this so much. Once I get started, I'm excited for what I'm creating. I'm excited to get it finished. And then like I'm going to bed and I'm dog tired, but I was just as excited to get up to talk to you. And so it's like I worked, I finished that. Today will be better because I can just be excited about releasing that and not be stressed about getting it finished and focus on the other things I need to
Mm,
do. And
mm.
it's like, even if I have a couple days like that, it'll be like I push through all of those days. Like I busted ass so I can have like a
Katrina,
great Friday.
I really
And
want
it's
to hear
like,
you.
yo,
I really want to hear you talk to yourself. I really want to hear the speech that you give yourself, like as if I'm not here. So because I feel like if you give me that speech,
this is
you
how I talk to myself, though.
talk,
I
do
talk
it,
to
do it,
myself
do
like I'm
it.
another person. That's what I'm saying. What I'm saying to you right now
Oh,
is how I basically monologue to myself. Like I finished that, like I'm looking at my list. I'm like, okay. Like I'm not like, oh, Katrina. I don't talk to myself that way. I'm like, okay, you finish this, you do this, tomorrow will be better. I was looking, I was like, what time I have to get up? Baron, okay, cool. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, that's good. Like everything tomorrow will be better because I'm up at 2 right now. And then I just am more excited to finish it. And then I finish it and it's good. Or like this morning, I woke up and I was like, ooh, no, I need to add something to the end. And now it's better. And I'm still, you know what I mean? But it's like just constantly pushing myself to whatever I feel like I need to get done. That's the one thing that is, I know this isn't technically podcast related, but that's the one thing that I saw in myself and young Jean is like, I am very much the same way where like I'll push myself to exhaustion. But I figured that out when I was like 8. Like I would get obsessed. I'm not joking. My mom has a thing. My mom would be like, ooh, it's time for you to take a nap. Like, cause I would get obsessed with projects and she would come in my room and she'd be like, what are you doing? And I'd be like, I can't get it right. And I would just have a bunch of pieces of paper around me with like one line on them. And she'd be like, what are you doing? And I'd be like, I keep messing up. And she'd be like, it's time for you to lay down. Like
she's
you've
like,
been
either
looking
this
at this
girl
too
is gonna
long.
be a comic or Dexter.
I'm manic as fuck. So I've been like that my whole life. So I had to figure out the coping mechanisms that young Jean had to figure out in quarantine to shut herself off. I had to do that in like high school or otherwise, and I still sometimes get bad where last night I was like, I have to finish this and I'm going to be up till 4, but it just got me that way. But most projects I'll be like, okay, this I can finish this today and then I have to let that go until tomorrow cuz otherwise I won't sleep until it's done. So like long-term projects I have a problem with because they don't get finished and that is stressful to me. And so I've
Hmm.
had to like reprogram my brain to accept things that can't be finished
You know
in
what
a
I think you
time of
need?
that I feel acceptable.
You know what I think you need? I think you need to
What?
really let yourself be inside a peaceful lull
Yeah, it's
and
hard. I feel like I work
sit
towards
with your
pockets of it.
disorientation.
That is definitely something that I'm learning in this past year
Oh,
is
okay.
to be comfortable amidst transitions
Mm-hmm.
and be like, no,
Mm-hmm.
this is okay. Cause I used to normally I would be stressed out, not even stressed out about money or anything, just stressed out that I wasn't at the end of something, feeling, and had to accept that nothing about life is the end of something except for the
Mm-hmm.
part that we're not conscious for. And learning that everything is a continuation has been very stressful for me, but like I'm getting more used to it.
I love it. No, no, no. But because I'm curious
Your
about
face
like,
right now.
no, because I'm trying to figure out, I wish I wasn't I'm trying to problem solve you. I apologize, but I'm trying to figure out like
It's okay.
what's the thing I can say that'll just make that light switch go ba-boink in Katrina's
So
face.
funny.
But
And
I
it's
don't
like,
know that
what
it
light switch?
exists.
Because it's the light switch time. Because it might just be time.
No, I guess what
Even
it
if you
is that
told me something and then in a year I was like, okay.
no, but you're having similar experiences to me because it's kind of like what it is that I'm trying to do is and I have fortunately had a lot of time, a lot of time, too much time even to think about this, is how do I work? And I don't even mean like,
Mm,
I just mean like, what is my process? How do I
mhm,
create? I
uh-huh,
have the space, fortunately, for for a little bit at least, to think about what my rhythms are, my instincts, my natural rhythms are, in spite of every fucking piece of advice I have ever heard, in spite of every external thing that someone told me is the way it's supposed to be done or will help me.
mhm,
Some of those things resonate, some of them don't. But sometimes I
right.
think about them way too fucking much. And so what I'm trying to do is figure out what my natural rhythms are.
Uh-huh.
And I
When you
guess
find those, don't you find it really comforting though?
when I find those, you act like I found it.
Have you found like, and I mean like not figured it all out, but like
No, when you
I
get
feel
to
like
the
they can
flow,
be
when you get to the
very
zone.
well, no, even just
Oh,
very,
okay.
very small things about yourself creatively that you might think, "Oh, I used to do that when I was a kid and I still do that." In terms
Yeah.
of like playing pretend or looking at something in the world and imagining it, or you freestyling and making up songs, any small thing that
Well,
you see in
Katrina, I
yourself
mean,
that you're glad the world didn't take away from you yet? Because
yeah,
I
well,
feel
what
like
that
those things
is,
make me very happy.
it's our sense of play.
Mhm.
It's knowing how to play and to just like live in joy. Honestly, that's what the creativity is learning how to play, is knowing how to play, and if you will, just focusing that play into a place. So
But
everybody tries to
honestly, Baron,
beat that out of us, as we.
but right, but and that's what I was thinking is everyone, you could say this about everyone, whatever, blah, blah, blah. But you as an individual and everything that you've learned about yourself and gone through and everything, and the fact that you have so much of that still is amazing, you
Oh,
know?
you're saying that to me?
Yeah.
Oh shit, thanks.
That's what I'm
Okay.
saying. You could say that about anyone or anybody, but I'm saying the fact, like, the levels of stuff that you have gone through and the levels of what you have left are astonishing, you know? You could have a lot less left in your tank.
Stony Island Audio.